Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have this haunting call. Whales truly are some of the coolest animals on Earth, and humpback whales are no exception. The males of the species are known for their songs, which last from 10 to 20 minutes and are actually pretty complex. They will repeat these songs for hours at a time, and it honestly isn't exactly known why they sing these songs at all. All the males in the group will produce the same song, and it will change seasonally. The females are also able to produce noise, but for some reason it is only the males who seem to produce these long songs. It is unclear how the whales even produce these sounds, however, because they don't actually have vocal cords. This is all super cool and interesting, but the whole reason you're here is for the sound, so let's take a listen to a more haunting track released by the humpback whale. Okay, so please tell me I'm not alone in thinking that that was the most beautifully haunting sound I've ever heard come from the sea, but also imagine being alone in the ocean, not knowing what that was, and then hearing it. Probably pretty terrifying, right? At least we're all safe here in YouTube land. In our number 9 spot today, we have this marine chorus. Okay, so out of context, if I played you this sound, what would you think it is? Definitely not something underwater, right? Well, as it turns out, this sound was indeed captured under the water, and these are the sounds of fish calls. While I always expected the chorus of marine animals to sound a little more similar to the stylings of Sebastian the crab, apparently that isn't even close. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even know that most fish had calls, but it turns out that our human ears just can't perceive all of the hoots, moans, barks, and chirps that take place in the vast seas. This recording actually helped scientists realize that there are fish who sing together in a chorus every day at dusk and dawn. There have now been around 800 species of fish that have been identified and confirmed to make some form of noise, and apparently some fish even engage in shouting matches in noisier parts of the ocean, which is kind of hilarious to imagine. I guess on the list of creepy noises, this one is less creepy and more just informative. In our number 8 spot today, we have the whistle. This is a sound that was first recorded in 1997 by the NOAA and was the source of many mysteries for years while people speculated about what may have caused the sound. While it still isn't exactly clear, it is now believed that the sound may have come from an underwater volcano eruption. If you didn't know, underwater or submarine volcanoes are located in all oceans on our Earth, and they're extremely interesting. There are certain kinds of marine animals that only exist near these extreme environments. Many submarine volcanoes are located near the areas of tectonic plate formations, which are also known as mid-ocean ridges. There's a YouTube user called Some Canadian, and they left a comment on a video of this whistle sound that pretty much sums it up exactly. First, we'll listen to the sound played at 10 times the original speed. The comment read, quote, "It could be the sound of something moving through tunnels. 1. Volcanic eruptions and gases. 2. Something big and hungry. You choose." I think they might really be onto something there. In our number 7 spot today, we have Bloop. Why are all of the weirdest ocean sounds first recorded in 1997? Bloop is another one that came from that year, and it was a loud and unusual sound that was placed as occurring several times off the southern coast of South America, and it was so loud that it could be heard over 5,000 kilometers away. At first, researchers were confused because, while the sound was actually similar to known sounds of living creatures, it was just way too loud that not even the blue whale, the largest living creature, could have produced it. So what is it then? Well, as it turns out, it is in fact not the Kraken, and instead it is actually consistent with ice quakes that are generated by large icebergs as they crack and fracture. It seems like this sound, going with that explanation, doesn't really make sense, but hey, I'm no scientist. But here's the sound for you to judge for yourself. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Western Pacific biotwang. In 2014, researchers and scientists heard weird sounds coming from the Mariana Trench, which, for the record, seems like the worst place for there to be strange noises coming from. For years, experts couldn't pin down this sound, and it was dubbed the Western Pacific biotwang, and while there is now a theory that was proposed by researchers from Oregon State University, they have also said that they might be entirely wrong. First, for reference, here's a little clip of the sound I'm talking about. Okay, so if you're like me, my mind immediately went to something alien related or some sort of creature that perhaps we haven't yet discovered. I mean, this is the Mariana Trench we're talking about. The theory put forward by the Oregon State researchers was that perhaps this may be a new type of baleen whale call. Okay, that's probably the best of all of the options, but I really don't like when someone tells me the answer to a scientific mystery only to tell me that that might not actually be the answer at all. While the low part of the sound would make sense to attribute to the baleen whale, it's the end high-pitched twangy part that would be incredibly unique. The wide range of frequencies in the sound are what continues to baffle those who are trying to find the source of this mysterious sound. In our number 5 spot today we have Julia. Julia is a sound that was recorded in 1999 by the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, which I've already talked about today. It sounds like it could be straight out of a horror movie, so considering it was a sound that came from our ocean and at first no one could tell where it had come from, it really was quite frightening. The sound has now likely been demystified, as researchers are pretty positive they know the origin of it. It is now believed that this sound was caused by an iceberg running aground off Antarctica. The sound, however, was insanely loud. It was so loud that it could be heard over the entire equatorial Pacific Ocean autonomous hydrophone array. Researchers were later able to narrow down what they believe may have been the point where the sound originated, although they've never actually been able to pinpoint it exactly. Most of the time when people hear the Julia sound, they hear it sped up at 16 times the original speed, but today we are going to listen to a clip of the sound at regular speed because I think it is much more eerie this way. In our number 4 spot today we have Knock. Okay, this is one that I'll admit was not captured by a submarine, but it was still underwater and it truly is terrifying. A few years ago, a beluga whale named Knock, who was unfortunately in captivity, was recorded as he swam below the water. Beluga whales have been called the canaries of the sea, and for good reason, but Knock really wanted to up the ante and instead blessed us all with this sound. Knock had this uncanny ability to mimic the rhythm and tone of human voices, and it truly is kind of frightening. It of course is also a little sad, as part of this was probably because he spent most of his life being forced to listen to humans speak because he was being held in captivity. Before this recording of Knock, the voices of belugas and their sometimes human-like sounds have been talked about, but Knock was the first time it was recorded, and honestly, I kind of wish it hadn't been. In our number 3 spot today we have the bioduct. Since the 1960s, this sound has absolutely stumped researchers who heard it. This sound was basically what the name attributed to it would suggest. It sounded like some sort of mechanical duck. For decades, researchers would hear this sound and it would often be heard and recorded again in the spring and winters. After all of these years though, it seems as though the answers to this mysterious sound are finally coming to light. In 2013, researchers attached sensors that collect acoustic data to 2 whales. One of those tags recorded for 18 hours and the other for 8, and the whales they were attached to were traveling with other whales in groups of 5 to 40, and they were all eating basically the entire time. Throughout this time, with the tags on the whales, there were a total of 32 calls heard, and this data is what led researchers to finally understand where the bioduct sound was coming from. As it turns out, this mysterious sound was actually the call of the minke whale. Researchers still aren't exactly clear as to what the call means to the whales, but it was a fantastic discovery that finally closed an almost 50-year-old scientific mystery. In our number 2 spot today we have upsweep. We all know how little we know about the ocean, and that also includes what kind of creatures lie in it. So while this mysterious sound out of context probably wouldn't be that freaky, when put into this situation it becomes quite a bit more eerie. This sound is referred to as upsweep, and it was caught when the Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory started its sound surveillance system in August of 1991. The sound is apparently more seasonal, with its peaks in spring and fall, but it is unclear if the changing of seasons is responsible for this sound, or if it's coming from something that lurks in the ocean and remains undiscovered. Just for reference, here's a clip of that sound played at 20 times the original speed. It is possible that this sound could be coming from underwater volcanic activity, but it is also possible that it's not, so who really knows? In our number 1 spot today we have an earthquake. Okay, so to add another creepy Mariana Trench sound to this list, we have one that was taken from the bottom of the Challenger Deep. In fact, it was the first ever sound recording to be taken from the bottom of the Challenger Deep, so it's a pretty cool scientific advancement as well as a terrifying sound. Despite the crushing pressures and the fact that there's no sunlight, the Challenger Deep is actually pretty noisy, and that is because of the fact that sound travels a really long way underwater, which ends up kind of turning the Challenger Deep into a sort of echo chamber of oceanic sounds. So while the recording was able to pick up things like the sound of a boat almost 11 kilometers overhead and the sounds of whale calls, they were also able to pick up the sound of a magnitude 5 earthquake rumbling near Guam on July 16, 2015. I'm not gonna lie, while being one of the scariest things I've ever heard, this is also one of the coolest things I've ever heard in my life too. Science really is just so cool sometimes.
Coming in at number 10, we have Saturn's screaming poles. These sound well and truly spine-chilling. These sounds rival anything a space horror composer could score, and these are natural sounds from Saturn's poles. These were recorded by NASA's Cassini spacecraft in 2002, and they're radio waves that come from Saturn's aurora, so very similar to the light phenomenon at our aurora borealis on Earth. So imagine the swirling green, pinks and yellow lights accompanying these sounds, which have been sped up with a slight frequency adjust so our human ears can hear them. This sound comes from one of my favourite YouTube channels, Space Audio. They were uploaded in March 2015. Now Cassini completed its space mission in 2017, losing contact as it made a suicide dive into the planet's atmosphere on September 15th. Coming in at number 9, we have Earth's hiss. Wait, the Earth hissed as a spacecraft flew by? Yeah, it did. The recording sounds like a huge breathing dragon. Have a listen. How is that anything other than the rise and fall of breath? It kind of sounds like Darth Vader. Apparently this is sound recorded in 1996 from NASA's polar mission. It's a sound of hot ionized particles generated by sunlight crashing into the atmosphere. It creates a sound like the Earth hissing at us, and to be honest, what with climate change and the rising greenhouse gases, I can understand why the Earth may be pissed enough to hiss. This isn't the first hiss heard from planet Earth by the patient ears of NASA. In 2015, a NASA student balloon experiment using infrared microphones picked up the unsettling sounds from 22 miles above the Earth's surface in New Mexico and Arizona. Coming in at number 8, we have music from the dark side of the moon. It was nothing compared to Pink Floyd, it was kind of a medium-pitched wooing isn't everyone's kind of music, but you know what? Each to their own. The astronauts on the Apollo 10 mission passed around the moon, and when they were the farthest side away from Earth, the dark side, they lost all radio contact with ground control and the rest of us Earthlings. As Apollo careered around the moon, they heard some very weird sounds, like really weird sounds. So weird that the astronauts talked about it constantly. The weird sounds were not reported at the time, but they were recorded and received by NASA when the mission returned to Earth. The recordings were then classified, which means that they were being safeguarded from human ears. Why? We're not sure. In 2008, the newly declassified recordings were found, and we can hear the weird woo noises for ourselves. Have a listen.
That music even sounds outer spacey, doesn't it? Do you hear that? That whistling sound? Yeah.
The astronauts are talking about it constantly, and NASA hasn't really returned to the moon since the 70s, and I'm wondering, you know what? Is it because of these weird noises? conspiracy. Coming in at number 7, we have the mysterious radio signals from deep space. For the last decade, scientists have been picking up unexplained radio signals they call fast radio bursts from deep space. In fact, on the day I scripted this video, August 7th, 2018, more signals were reported. Now, these signals have ranged in frequency, but the most recent are 580 megahertz, that's 200 lower than previously heard. The latest sounds detected come from very, very far away, possibly billions of light years away. Now, the radio signals you're about to hear aren't the most recent, but they are pretty unsettling, especially when the thudding kicks in. Just listen. Okay, and then there's some more. It sounds like maybe the plucking of a string, maybe? Currently, scientists don't know where exactly the sounds are coming from, but they are trying to pinpoint them. Coming into number 6, we have Jupiter's crying lightning. The official term for Jupiter's dissonant space whirs is Jovian whistles. These are descending and ascending sounds created by lightning strikes in the atmosphere. As you may know, Jupiter is a decidedly stormy planet, with its red eye being a giant storm that has raged non-stop for over 350 years. Jupiter, you stormy old babe. But I mean, let's have a listen to these terrifying shrieks. There's kind of like a shwam, shwam sound, and it kind of sounds like something being launched, like shoo, shoo. What is this about? It's the weirdest lightning I've honestly ever heard. I don't think you can actually hear lightning on Earth. Maybe. This sound was recorded by Jupiter's Voyager in the 70s, so they're around 40 years old. Now, the planet is likely still screaming in its stormy areas and has been for hundreds of years. Can you even imagine? Coming into number 5, we have Ganymede's ghoulish shrieks. Honestly, I feel like Jupiter's moon Ganymede is trying hard to tell us something here. One of Jupiter's 16 moons, Ganymede, is officially the biggest moon in our solar system with a radius of 2,634 kilometers. This makes her bigger than both Mercury and Pluto, and 2/3 the size of Mars. Hey there, big moon, what you doing? This big moon has its own magnetosphere, which creates some big noises, and they're pretty unsettling. Their sounds were recorded in 1996 by the Galileo spacecraft. The initial approach into the magnosphere is punctuated by strong bursts of noises. Then comes some stranger computer beeping like sounds. Have a little listen. Right? Then through the beeps comes windy sounding whirs, then the whole thing crescendos with beeps interspersed with what sounds like alien cries. Tell me what you think. Terrifying, right? Coming into number 4, we have the screams of a dying star. So it turns out that stars have feelings too, and why shouldn't they? They're much bigger than us, and we're actually kind of like teeny weeny blips, like atoms compared to a star, or even smaller. In 2012, scientists at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center released an artist's impression of a black hole swallowing a screaming star. The real-life star was spotted falling into a huge black hole 3.9 billion light years away in the constellation of Draco. It seems as the stars get sucked in, they release blips of light every 200 seconds, which NASA thinks are like screams. As the star is so far away, we haven't got an actual sound recording that the star made. Scientists say that the frequency of the light, if converted to the sound, would sound like a very low D sharp. NASA buffs can predict what this sound is like based on the oscillations that have been observed by smaller matter falling into smaller black holes in our galaxy, the Milky Way. Coming into number 3, we have a creepy singing comet. In 2014, scientists recorded a strange whirring, almost alien-like sounding noises. The clicking, vibrating sounds get even higher in frequency and sound very much like I would imagine an alien trying to communicate with us sounds. The Rosetta orbiter picked up the sounds from the 67P CG comet in August 2014. Have a little listen. So I don't know what is going on, but neither does head researcher Karl-Heinz Gleismeister, whose team was baffled by the noise. The European Space Agency think that the sounds must be coming as a result of a process of oscillation from the comet in orbit. I'm still so confused as to why scientists always give space objects such sterile names like 67P CG. You really missed a trick here. Anyway, what do you make to these sounds and the singing comet? Coming in at number 2, we have the heartbeat of a black hole. So this is a thing apparently, and actually I'm terrified. I thought that black holes were where things went to die, but it turns out that they may have a little soul going on in there. While we can't directly see or hear what black holes are like, we can see and hear what they do to their environment. In 2008, an MIT professor, Edward Morgan, translated X-ray data from the star system GRS 1915-105. He then turned it into sound. Now the binary star system is a black hole and a star that feeds into it, and this is what it sounds like. So kind of like a heartbeat, the beating of a deep, dark, all-consuming black heart. How romantic and seriously twisted. Okay, finally, I am pretty sure that listening to this will actually send you mad, like bonkers never be the same again mad. I was listening to this with earphones while researching this video, and I had to take them off because it sounded like there was a drill going through my brain. Coming into number 1, we have echoes from Titan. Titan is one of Saturn's moons. The sounds you're supposed to hear right now were recorded from Huygens, an atmospheric entry probe sent by the European Space Agency into a suicide landing onto the alien moon. The sounds are absolutely far out. It starts with a beating and then some interstabbing robotic sounds. Listen.
And I went off the deep end.
Ed Kemper has been serving a life sentence in this California.
Then, well, whatever this is, buzzing, brain numbing, buzzing.
At age 15. I would have killed until they gunned me down. I wouldn't have been able to reason my way out.
What do you think? Can you deal with that? Okay, this is where it gets awful. It reaches into a crescendo where you think your brain will explode.
And I did it in my society.
Seriously, stop, Titan. Stop this. Titan's kicking off. You may want to couple this sound with images taken from Titan 2. Together they're quite the intergalactic horror story.
Number 10. Space music. Sound needs a medium to travel, and thus it cannot be heard in the vacuum of space. Yet, astronauts have returned to Earth with fascinating tales of hearing odd noises while in space, which is terrifying. During the Apollo 10 mission, which was a test run for sending the first men to the moon, astronauts were carrying various equipment with them, which was being tested to withstand space as they were deemed essential for the moon landing. While circling the moon, the astronauts on the vessel heard a certain whistling sort of music. The music lasted for almost an hour and creeped the living daylights out of the astronauts. One of them described the sound as a sort of otherworldly music. On returning to Earth, the astronauts struggled for a while on whether or not to tell NASA and the rest of the world about what they experienced. Later, astronaut Michael Collins, who was also a part of the Apollo 11 mission with Aldrin and Armstrong, revealed hearing similar music while on the moon's surface. An engineer from the US Space Agency said the noises likely came from interference caused by radios within the lunar and command modules. However, Al Worden, an astronaut on Apollo 15, disputed the explanation. Number 9. Noise in the stratosphere. In 2023, strange sounds that were recorded high in Earth's atmosphere have scientists baffled. A solar-powered balloon mission detected a repeating infrasound noise in the stratosphere, and scientists don't know what's making it. The solar-powered balloon mission, launched by researchers from Sandia National Laboratories, carried out a microphone to the region of Earth's atmosphere found around 31 miles above the planet called the stratosphere. This region is relatively calm and free of storms, turbulence, and commercial air traffic, meaning microphones in this layer of the atmosphere can eavesdrop on the sound of our planet, both natural and human-made. However, the microphone in this particular study also heard strange sounds that repeat a few times per hour. Their source has yet to be identified. The sounds were recorded in the infrasound range, meaning they were at frequencies of 20 Hz and lower, well before the range of a human ear. There are mysterious infrasound signals that occur a few times per hour on some flights, but the source of these is completely unknown, Daniel Bowman of Sedina National Laboratories said in a statement. Number 8. skyquakes. I didn't even know that skyquakes were a thing, so for those of you who don't know, skyquakes are mysterious booms from the sky but are not thunder, and they are heard all over the world. These mysterious booms sound like cannon fire rumbling down from the sky. They are commonly heard near water, occasionally rattling windows and plates. Now, some have been explained by military aircraft breaking the sound barrier, but that doesn't account for the reports of skyquakes heard as far back as 1824. Now, scientists have come up with a few likely causes. Near coast, the booms may be caused by enormous waves crashing against the cliffs. Sand dunes are also capable, through unexplained mechanisms, of producing sounds, including, on rare occasions, large booms. Other options are meteors generating sonic booms as they speed into the atmosphere, shock waves caused by coronal mass ejections from the sun smashing into Earth's magnetic field, distant volcano eruptions, far-off thunder redirected through the upper atmosphere, deep earthquakes making noises by cracking the crust, and gas belching up from the underground vents beneath the ocean or lake beds. But the fact that it could literally be so many things without a definite answer is freaky. Number 7. The upsweep. The upsweep is composed of a long train of sounds that sweeps repeatedly upwards like an unearthly howl from low to high frequency. It was first detected in the Pacific Ocean in 1991 by the autonomous hydrophone arrays of the UN National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. Interestingly, it changes throughout the year, peaking in spring and autumn, although scientists are unsure whether this is due to changes in the source or changes in the environment the sound travels through. The upsweep has a plausible but unconfirmed explanation: undersea volcanoes. It's thought the sound may result from hot lava pouring into cold seawater. Though it can still be detected, the level of the upsweep has been slowly declining since its initial discovery. Number 6. La Llorona whale. The legend of the La Llorona has a wide variety of details and versions. In a typical version of the legend, a beautiful woman named Maria marries a rich man to whom she bears 2 children. One day, Maria sees her husband with another woman, and in a fit of blind rage, she drowns their offspring in a river, which she immediately regrets. Unable to save them and consumed by guilt, she drowns herself as well, but is unable to enter the afterlife, forced to be in purgatory and roam this earth until she finds her offspring. Now, the legend is deeply rooted in Mexican popular culture and is told to encourage people not to wander off in the dark and near bodies of water, such as rivers and lakes alone. It's said that if you hear her cries being distant, it means she's close, and if they seem close, that she's far. She usually has a loud cry, kind of like a coyote or owl. Stories of a weeping lady going around the streets of Mexico City were being reported more than a decade before the Spaniards arrived in the Valley of Mexico in 1519. Now, people have posted videos online of them hearing what they believe to be her cries. Is it her or something more sinister? Either way, I am scared. Number 5. Colossi of Memnon. The Colossi of Memnon is on the west bank of Luxor, are 17 meters high and cut from 2 massive granite blocks. Many of these sounds have been heard for decades or even centuries, but let's go back millennia to this strange case of the singing Egyptian monument. West of the River Nile, 2 massive twin stone statues stand proudly. Called the Colossi of Memnon, they are a tribute to a pharaoh. In 27 BC, a large earthquake shattered part of one of the colossal statues, cracking the lower section and collapsing the top. Soon people began to notice something strange as the statue started to sing. The sound usually came at dawn and was primarily reported in February or March. To Greek historian and geographer Strabo, it sounded like a blow, while Greek traveler and geographer Pausanias compared it to the string of a lyre breaking. Scientists today speculate the sound was caused by the rise in heat and humidity in the ruins of the stone as the sun rose. But they can't check their theory because although the statues are still around, the sound is not. In about 199 CE, Roman Empire Septimus Severus ordered the repair of the earthquake damage and the singing disappeared. Number 4. Forest Grove Sound. In February 2016, a high-pitched noise was heard intermittently at night in Forest Grove, Oregon. The Department of Forestry determined that their equipment was not a cause of the sound. The Washington Post described the sound sounding like a giant flute playing off-pitch, car brakes, or a steam whistle. NBC News described it as akin to a bad one-note violin solo broadcast over a microphone with non-stop feedback. It reportedly lasted from 10 seconds to several minutes at a time. The noise occurred near the Gales Creek Road. Neither the City of Forest Grove Public Works Department nor the fire department were able to explain the noise. According to NW Natural, there were no problems with gas lines in Forest Grove at the time. In February 2018, Andrew Dawes, a professor of physics at Pacific University, mapped the locations where the noise had been heard, although the results were inconclusive and did not suggest any single location. Throughout February 2016, approximately 200 calls were made to the Forest Grove Police Department, according to Captain Mike Herb, who said that most of the calls were suggesting explanations for the sound, ranging from frogs to aliens to Bigfoot. In late February 2016, the Forest Grove Police Department announced via Facebook that the noise did not pose a safety hazard, and the police announced that they were halting their investigation until further information appeared. However, after February 2016, the noise was not heard again. Number 3. The Ping. Furry and Helka Strait is a narrow 1.2 to 12.4 miles wide Arctic seawater channel located in Nunavut, Canada. This strait is the site of an unexplained phenomenon called the Ping, alternately described as a hum or beep heard throughout the summer of 2016. It was heard by various residents of the town in Igloolik, and local hunters blamed it for a comparative scarcity of marine game animals that year. The noise is emanating from the sea floor, and this concerned a lot of people. The Department of National Defense has been informed of the strange noises emanating from the area, and the Canadian Armed Forces are taking appropriate steps to actively investigate the situation, a spokesperson wrote in a statement. Canadian military authorities performed an airborne survey of the area but reported nothing unusual, nor did they have any knowledge of allied or foreign submarine activity in the area. So it is still unknown what it was. Number 2. Bloop. Bloop is the big kahuna in unexplained sounds. In 1997, an extremely powerful, ultra-low frequency sound was detected at various listening stations thousands of miles apart and traced to somewhere west of the southern tip of South America. The sound only lasted about a minute and was heard repeatedly over that summer, but has not been heard since. Bloop is generally believed to be the sound of a massive ice quake, but scientists haven't totally ruled out the possibility that the sound originated from something organic. That's where things get scary, as if an animal was the source of bloop, it would have to be larger than a blue whale. Now, the most interesting of all theories stems from the fact that bloop's location is somewhere close to author H.P. Lovecraft's fictional sunken city, Rayla, where the creature known as Cthulhu lies dead but dreaming. Cthulhu can be best described as part man, dragon, and octopus, which seems as likely a source as any for the ocean's greatest auroral anomaly. And coming in at number 1 is the hum. A constant low frequency sound has been plaguing people around the world since at least the 1960s, from Canada to New Mexico, Scotland to New Zealand. Most you hear it say it sounds like a truck engine idling, and earplugs don't help block it out. Called the hum, it is so well documented that there's actually statistics about it. It can only be heard about 2% of the population, it is generally present indoors, it becomes louder at night, it is heard more often in rural and suburban areas, and it tends to be heard by middle-aged people. Now, some doubt the hum is even a physical sound, as in a fraction of cases it might be the result of psychology, with people focusing too hard on ambient noise. But for most, the hum appears to be very real. Many obvious sources have been ruled out, such as highway noise, industrial equipment, the electricity grid, and phone towers. Other theories of varying plausibility have been suggested, such as earth tremors, mating fish, power or gas lines, tunneling under the earth, wireless communication devices, and the OG, of course, aliens. A study by geoscientist David Deming of the University of Nebraska suggests the hum may actually be a result of very low frequency (VLF) radio transmissions used by military powers. Other research suggests the hum comes from natural terrestrial or geological phenomena. It is a well-studied fact that animals seem to be able to predict earthquakes, so perhaps some humans have the same mechanism. Either way, it is strange.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Secret App. At one point or another, we all got the Secret Vault app on our phones, you know, the one that's designed to look like another app, like a calculator or something like that. It's in case anybody goes through your phone. You can hide your memes or MSN passwords or nudies, whatever you want, all in this app. It just says Vault on it too. You're like, okay, well, this is obviously the one. But how secure is that app to begin with? Who's making that? Who's on the other end? Back in June in Australia, hundreds of criminals were arrested after a 3-year operation was complete. The FBI have been trying to crack this case for a while now, obviously 3 years. These cell phones that come from the black market basically have this calculator app that is secretly a platform for criminals to message each other safely. You up? heist, question mark, rose emoji. Shipments, trafficking weapons, contracts, just horrible stuff with horrible people, but the FBI was able to intercept over 20 million messages in over 45 different languages. That's a lot. Operation Trojan Shield. Yeah, you might want to go delete those old pics in that free Vault app you got 10 years ago. Yeah, you never know. Go take a look. You might still have it. Right next to Jellycar. Delete both. Number 9. Governor Rod Blagojevich. Back in October 2008, an FBI investigation towards Governor Rod Blagojevich had began. It all began when one of the governor's associates tipped off the FBI that Rod was promising official favors in exchange of campaign or personal funds. Yeah, that's a no-go in the world of an Illinois governor. You can't do that. So the FBI tapped his office and started recording his phone calls. They recorded him for 7 weeks, and after that point, they had more than enough evidence to arrest him come December 2008. Of course, he was also impeached. Recordings didn't sound great as well. There was lots of profanity, lots of talk about this new job as governor and all these bribes that he could now maintain in the future. Rod Blagojevich was convicted of 18 counts of felony corruption by time 2011 rolled around, including soliciting bribes, attempted extortion, wire fraud, just a plethora of horrible stuff. He was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison, and on top of that, he had to pay fines of up to $21,000. Number 8. Nixon's wiretaps. It wouldn't be shocking if you've heard of the Nixon Watergate hotel scandal. It's pretty massive, history-wise, but if you forget, the Watergate scandal was what led to Nixon resigning in 1974. Back in June 1972, numerous burglars were caught attempting to break into the offices of the Democratic National Committee at the Watergate Hotel in Washington. They were breaking in with the intent to plant bugs. Little mics, not bugs. Although that would be horrible too. There's a bunch of bugs around. Like, where are all these ants come from? Several people involved were connected to Nixon's re-election committee. Nixon denied as best as he could, obviously, reminding us that he's not a crook, famous not a crook line, although we had over 3,500 hours of secretly recorded conversation. Now, there's one 18-minute gap in these tapes. That's what's so compelling still to this day. Maybe he was farting that entire time. You never know. Number 7. Mayor Marion Barry. When the FBI secretly records you, be it video, audio, whatever the case, you're gonna be pretty upset when you eventually find out. No, I would assume I'd be upset. Nixon had all of our phone calls saved. I'd be like, why? What? I was ranting. It's personal. This is private. Back in 1990, the late Marion Barry, who was once mayor of Washington, was being recorded by the FBI and DC police while he was in his hotel room, taking part in some illegal narcotics and such with a friend. Barry went to prison after this was all a big setup, but that still didn't stop him from becoming mayor again once he was released. So you can go to jail, do all this stuff, and bad things happen, get set up by your friend, and then come back and still be a mayor. R.I.P. Number 6. Lance Armstrong's phone calls. Not to be confused with Neil Armstrong, although this next one is truly out of this world. I had to. Lance won the Tour de France 7 times from 1999 to 2005. Impressive, 1000%. I can't even imagine. My legs get tired walking up a hill, let alone cycling this fast and far. Oh my god. It's more than likely you've heard about some happenings with Lance, some scandals and such. In July 2004, Greg LeMond, also a Tour de France winner, he secretly recorded himself having a conversation with Stephanie McIlvaine. Stephanie overheard a conversation previously where Lance was in the hospital being treated for testicular cancer. She admitted on the phone that this is what she heard. Lance admitted to using steroids to a doctor that day. Now this is pretty meta because this is like a confession of something that was overheard in a phone call. It's literally broken telephone at this point, and Armstrong insisted this conversation with medical staff never happened to begin with. But come October 2012, the anti-doping agency confirmed Armstrong had been using throughout his career. The Tour de France then stripped him of all of his titles. Number 5. Hoover and JFK. This one goes pretty deep. Officials tapping officials. Back in the 60s, there was a file you would probably go to jail for trying to even see for yourself. Just by doing that, they'd be like, yep, you're going, see ya, go wash your eyes. This file was the FBI's official and confidential file. It was kept in the office of J. Edgar Hoover, and inside it was just a plethora of secrets. I'm talking about senators doing sketchy stuff, but one file showed that Hoover was taping phone calls with JFK. Hoover had enough dirt on everybody. That was his whole plan. And what he knew about JFK was that he was having an affair with a 25-year-old named Judith Campbell Exner, who at the time was also seeing mob boss Sam Giancana. So it's like a love triangle of like, wow, we shouldn't be doing this at all. In March 1962, Hoover told Kennedy over brunch that the FBI had tapes on him, and of course this affair. Odd that JFK didn't fire him until his death in 1972. That's a pretty odd thing. That's a loaded threat right there, to be honest. He's like, okay, I see that, and I'm not going to touch it. Enjoy your mimosa. I'm not going to do anything about this. Have fun. Just one bill, please. Number 4, Linda Tripp. This next one is a real trip. That's I like throwing puns in. I had to. Back in 1998, Pentagon employee Linda Tripp would have phone calls with Monica Lewinsky, who of course was involved in a scandal with President Clinton. There's some things that happened there. So these calls conversations were probably pretty juicy, for lack of a better term. Lewinsky even caught on to these recordings at one point while they were happening, and she asked Linda on the other side what this double clicking noise is that she kept hearing. She's like, what's going on? Why is there clicking? Are you chewing gum? Tripp lied to her. She was like, yep, I am chewing gum for sure. That's it. Definitely not me recording something. Meanwhile, Tripp was indeed secretly recording tapes that led to Clinton being impeached. The charges against Tripp for illegally recording were dropped. Snitches get off the hook. Apparently. That's wild. Number 3, Ralph Berger. Sometimes you get caught and then the city has your back and then you almost get away with it. It's shady and scary and all lies. But that's how it works, especially if you're Ralph Berger. This attorney was under investigation. He was suspected of bribing public officials, so the police just had to listen in. They're like, oh, we have to know what's going on. They tapped Berger's calls for 2 months. Lo and behold, proof was found. Thing is, Berger had rights, so this was tricky at this point. He argued for the courts to throw out the case by arguing his Fourth Amendment rights were exploited. He claimed a mistrial in order to dodge corruption charges, and it worked. New York was on his side at this point, but ultimately the Supreme Court said this was legal and you are for sure a criminal. See you later, alligator. And then New York was like, I guess, yeah, he's bad. That's a good call too, I guess. I don't know. Number 2, Paul Manafort. You never know when the Russian mob may pop up and just start listening about. Former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort was under investigation under secret court orders. The FBI obtained a warrant to listen in on Manafort's phone calls back in 2014, and then come 2016, the FBI learned about possible ties between Trump associates and Russian operatives. He was the target of these FBI wiretaps before and after Trump's campaign because under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the government can secretly wiretap if you can convince a judge that they're possibly agents of a foreign power. So if you're ever like, I think John's cheating on me, maybe he's an agent of a foreign power, just convince somebody and then you can go through his phone. And finally, number 1, Squidgygate. This one's not so much FBI, but it's pretty juicy. Odds are you haven't heard of it. Let's do it. Lady Diana married Prince Charles on July 29th, 1981. The wedding, of course, was huge. It was televised. It was a flashy whole event. Diana was only 20 at the time. Can you imagine? 20 years old. Wow. The pair had 2 children, Prince William and Prince Harry, but rumors quickly spread about how strong the couple really was behind closed doors. Adultery was rumored on both sides. Finally, come 1996, they divorced. Diana goes on to do great charitable work, but a phone call surfacing from 1992 still has us talking. The call was between Diana and childhood friend James Gilby. During this call, which went down New Year's Eve back in 1989, James called Diana darling and squidgy, those fun little nicknames, even confessing his love for her, in case we didn't catch that with the whole squidgy nickname. Diana told him about how her husband made her feel awful and made her life just miserable, and then 2 ham radio operators just happened to overhear all of it and then record it all. And they sold the tape in 1992. Ken Worf, who was a former bodyguard of Diana, he believes the government communications headquarters played the recordings on loop until radio operators had to catch it. Then they did the deed from there. When we think of Princess Diana, this part of her dark history is often overlooked. Starting off our list at number 10, air raids. An air raid in progress. I couldn't even imagine how terrifying this would sound in real life, let alone experience. I remember my grandmother explaining this to me when I was a wee little young tot, and I never forgot it ever since. But as World War II began, these regulations came into play, these new regulations. Like blackout regulations, for example. When there was a blackout, it didn't mean all the power went off. Blackouts are when families would have to cover up all the windows at night to make sure no light escaped, so that no planes flying overhead could see anything. Street lights were also shut off, of course, and if headlights were needed on your car, they had to cover up all of them except for one little slit of light. When enemy planes were seen, these air sirens would sound. At this point, you would make your way to a shelter or be on fire spotting duty. Number 9, fire engines. So after these explosives were dropped on cities, we needed to, of course, put them out as quickly as possible. Not only is the fire causing damage to the cities, but also it's illuminating the area. All things we can't have during World War II, of course. So Britain prepared for the worst at this point. They created an auxiliary fire service with over 25,000 members. 18 to 60, that's your job, sorry. September 1940, the Blitz happened. These were the largest fires seen since the Great Fire of 1666. The sounds of a fire engine in the 40s meant that it was already too late. More often than not, these fire service members were working 15-hour shifts, and quite literally the worst conditions in history. Number 8, Spitfires. Moving our attention now to the skies, the sound of Spitfires were one often you didn't forget. Spitfires, or submarine Spitfires, were the most common in terms of fighter planes for World War II. The British single-seater helped bring victory in the Battle of Britain, and during World War II, squadrons of them were based at RAF airfields all over southern England. This was around the time that radar was also first used, so these Spitfires could find their enemy before they even got to their intended target. This is a big deal. The scramble of Spitfires right afterwards meant that a fight was about to go down hundreds of feet in the air, and it sounded something like this. Number 7, the V1. The first of Germany's vengeance weapons. Okay, the only aircraft also to use pulse jet for power, so it's gonna sound different. The V1 flying bomb was an early version of a cruise missile. These were deployed for the London. They were first developed at Peenemünde Army Research Center back in 1939. YouTube won't let me say it, but the Yazis call this the cherry stone. The Yazis, the other guys, I'm not gonna say them. The first was launched at London on June 13th, 1944. These missiles were fired from facilities along the French and Dutch coasts. And yes, you definitely would have heard them pass. Or worse, approach. Number 6, the Katyusha. The Katyusha multiple rocket launcher sounds intimidating by that name alone. It was first built in the Soviet Union during World War II. It was the first mass-produced self-propelled rocket artillery. Now, of course, this sounded haunting. It was loud. They didn't have that great of an accuracy, but with multiple rockets launching all at the same time within 10 seconds apart, it didn't really make a difference if they were close or not. It's doomed. The downside was that these behemoths took a while to reload. Between 1941 and 1945, the Soviet Union produced around 10,000 of these multiple rocket launchers. At first, these weapons were designed to be fired from warplanes, not vehicles. That's any indication on how loud they go. Number 5, dive planes. Junkers Ju-87, or Stuka, were German dive designed by Hermann Pohlmann. The first time one of these nightmares took flight was back in 1935. They made their first debut in combat come 1937. That's when the German Air Force used them during the Spanish Civil War, as well as the Axis forces during World War II. The Yazis designed these planes so that they would emit a loud noise. They made it loud on purpose. They referred to it as the Jericho trumpet. They were designed to weaken the enemy and scare them. And in doing so, the aerodynamics slowed the planes down by 20 miles per hour. So eventually, the sirens were pulled off. Number 4, bats. You would never think of bats as an unsettling World War II sound, but get ready, here we go. Bat bombs were an experimental weapon developed in World War II, which was exactly as it sounds. The idea was bats with incendiary devices attached to them, and they would swoop in behind enemy lines and decimate the enemy. A man by the name of Lytle S. Adams, a dentist named Lytle, believe it or not, was behind this entire idea. A dentist from Pennsylvania. Who'da thunk? The 60-year-old was driving home from vacation when suddenly he witnessed thousands of bats exit the Carlsbad Caves, and then he also heard about Pearl Harbor and he began to brainstorm at this moment. These tiny flying mammals could be connected to tiny time-fused incendiary bombs and then released to land on the enemy. This was just 2 months after Pearl Harbor, and then he presented the idea to the White House and the project was approved. However, it was later abandoned in 1943 due to the development of nuclear bombs. Number 3, reindeers. Yeah, you didn't think bats were the only animal weirdly involved in World War II, did you? Let's do it. June 1941, the Germans were attacking the Soviet Union, and it was one of the biggest attacks in history. Britain and US had to send weapons, supplies, anything really, just to keep them afloat, just to keep them in the fight. They sent these supplies through the Arctic Circle. That was the only route, but of course it was littered with U-boats. Thankfully, the British HMS Trident was there to watch the waters, and in turn the Soviets were able to fight on. So as a gift, as a thank you, the Soviets sent the captain of the Trident, the World War II submarine, a gift. What would you send a gift to someone like this? Well, they sent them a live reindeer. They sent him a reindeer, like he's Santa Claus. The British had to accept it because it was ill-mannered if they didn't, so they had to keep now a 6-foot-tall, real-life reindeer on a submarine. Her name was Pollyanna. They brought her on board through a torpedo tube. How sad is this? She was a crew member for 6 weeks also. This wasn't like 1 or 2 weeks where they're like, okay, can we like get rid of this thing? Like the thing's over. 6 weeks. That's a lot of business days. That's so many business days. She slept better than most, believe it or not. She actually shared a room in the captain's quarters. Finally, the Trident returned home to Britain and our leading lady was donated to the Regent's Park Zoo. She's probably like, thank God, I hated that. Mayor's had to pop for so long. Number 2, Operation Gunnerside. This next one should be a movie. It's already a movie. Damn, okay. We've talked about horrible sounds now that we connect to world events, like the Blitz for example. But what if one of the most daring operations from World War II barely had any sound at all? What if nobody even knew what was going on? What if nobody even knew what was happening? What if the most unsettling sound you heard were the sound of skis clacking together? Could that ever be a possibility? Skis? Could skis be haunting? Well, it depends who you ask. In the early 40s, Germany took over a factory in Telemark so they could make plutonium. Now, originally the Allies sent 30 British army officers, but they couldn't make it due to weather conditions. So next, they sent 11 Norwegians with skis. Norwegians, ski-gens. I tried, we try here. The Norwegians snuck down the 660-foot ice gorge. They snuck in, laid a bunch of explosives, waited for their hostage to find his glasses. I'm not making that up. He was a Norwegian caretaker. They let him go after. 0 casualties also this entire mission, might I remind you. And then they left on skis. The Heroes of Telemark starring Kirk Douglas. This is a real movie. Check it out if you want to see what I just described in live action. Yeah, it gave us a little break on our dark history here. And finally, number 1, interrogations. Hans Scharf, who has since been dubbed the Master Interrogator, was living in South Africa with his family, but when he was visiting Germany, that's when the war broke out. So of course he was drafted, but his wife convinced a general not to put him on the front lines, but instead with interpreters. After a handful of mistakes and wild coincidences, Hans became the lead interrogator for the Allied pilots felled in France and Germany. His methods of interrogation, though, changed history, and I had to include it on this list. Usually interrogations are harsh. It's a lot of pressure verbally and then also physically. For example, when he was younger, he witnessed a prisoner get abused. And so from that day on, he vowed to never do the same. It was so bad that it changed his thought process. So his interrogation methods revolve now around using kindness and friendly banter. His method has been studied since and turns out scientifically, yeah, this works better. This way, whoever's on the other side of said interrogation leaks more information, and nobody has to break a digit this time around. Once the war was finally over, Scharf testified against Germans, moved to the States, and began a new career as a mosaic artist. If you want to see his work currently on display, you gotta head to Silurenda's castle in Disney World. No, I'm not joking. He did that.
Kicking things off at number 10, we have howler monkeys. Just picture yourself for a moment, guys, lying in the dark, alone in the Amazon rainforest. You've heard stories of the howler monkeys who call out in the middle of the night, and as you're lying there in silence, you hear this. This morning when I woke up, I wasn't scared of howler monkeys. Yeah, it's funny how things change. Moving on to number 9, we have the nuclear alarm siren. Now the siren you're about to hear is ready to play all over the world in a whole bunch of different countries. It's a sound that governments will use to tell their people, to tell you guys, that a nuclear attack will be happening within the next few minutes and to try and find shelter before the bomb drops. Of course, the sad reality is that for a lot of people, they probably won't be able to find adequate shelter in time, and this chilling noise will be the last thing they ever hear. Ooh, did they have to make it so scary? They could have just done any noise. Why does it have to be that one? It's just scary. They knew that. Alright, next up at number 8, we have the Max Headroom incident. On the 22nd of November 1987, a man dressed as a television character, Max Headroom, managed to interrupt the broadcast of a TV station to show possibly one of the strangest sights I've ever seen. And it's made extra creepy by the noise. Yeah. That went on for about 90 seconds, and to this day, nobody knows who it was, how they did it, or why they did it. And frankly, I'm kinda happy not knowing. Coming in number 7, we have the weepy voiced killer.
Don't talk, just listen.
Paul Michael Stefani was a serial killer who killed 4 women between 1980 and 1982. He became known as the weepy voice killer because after some of the murders, he would call the police in hysterics and start with, "Don't talk, just listen."
Fire emergency.
Please don't talk, just listen.
He was eventually caught and sentenced to 40 years in prison, but died there in 1998.
I'd rather kill myself to get locked up. I'll try not to kill anybody else.
Very scary stuff. Alright, coming in at number 6 now, we have the Lost Cosmonaut. During the space race between the Soviet Union and the US, both countries were very secretive about their space missions, and there were countless cover-ups or disasters that were never mentioned to the public. In 1961, 2 Italian brothers were using radio equipment to listen in on one of the Soviet missions, but what they heard chilled them to the bone. It appeared to be the sound of a female cosmonaut in distress as she re-entered the atmosphere. 3 days later, the Soviet news agency said there had been a failed re-entry of a satellite into the atmosphere, but they never acknowledged that this incident ever took place, or that the woman even existed. But as you can tell from those distressing sounds, she definitely did. Moving on to number 5, we have the UVB-76 radio station. Somewhere in Russia, there is a radio station that broadcasts a buzzing tone 25 times a minute, all day, every day, and it was first noticed in the 1970s. Sometimes the buzzer stops and a voice in Russian transmits numbers and codes, but nobody has figured out exactly what's going on. Now, I could show you guys many audio clips over the past 40 years, but one really creepy one that stuck with me is where a woman's scream can be heard underneath the never-ending buzzer. Next up at number 4, we have Area 51, the frantic caller. In 1997, Art Bell received a phone call on his radio station from a distressed man who claimed he worked at the top secret Area 51 site where many UFO stories originate from.
They are not what they claim to be.
Now what you're about to hear is some of his call before the entire radio station was mysteriously shut down mid-call.
The few that are left will be more easily controllable.
In some way, something knocked us off the air and we're on a backup system now.
Real? Maybe. I think that guy sounds legitimately terrified for his life, and why did the radio station get just shut down right after that? I don't know, but it's scary for sure. Alright, moving on to number 3, we have the WKCR incident. In 1995, someone hijacked the WKCR radio station in New York. At first, the song warped, then otherworldly sounds started, and eventually, a female voice began quickly reading out the names of people who had died during the 1980s. Those names included the likes of Barry Valentino, who was killed in a terrorist attack flying over Scotland, and Frank Oppenheimer, known as the father of the atomic bomb. Now, some people have doubted its authenticity, but either way, it's a creepy sound nonetheless. Coming in at number 2, we have the Night Stalker. This is the story of a rapist and murderer in East Sacramento during the 1970s and 1980s who would call up the homes of his next victims and leave answer phone messages telling them he's going to kill them next. Now, if this clip we're about to play you is scary to hear, imagine if you were the actual next victim. And coming in at number 1, when Hurricane Ike hit Cuba and Texas in 2008, it killed almost 200 people and did $37.5 billion worth of damage. There was an evacuation order on Galveston Island off the coast of Texas. One weather reporter chose to stay behind though and barricaded himself in his hotel. He recorded the sound you're about to hear as Hurricane Ike passed right over him. Now, I don't know why it sounds like someone opened the gates of hell, but I don't want to hear it anymore. Now at number 10 with the Swedish Rhapsody. Now in one of our previous videos we talked a little bit about number stations. They are places that send out very creepy signals. They seem to come from just secret locations that are thought to be used as communication posts between spies and their governments. Well, I'm not sure if they're also required to be very creepy because they usually are. And this one called the Swedish Rhapsody was one of the creepiest. Nobody has ever been able to decode its message. It features a small girl speaking in German and some music from your childhood nightmares. I don't know what the secret message was there, but I'm not going to keep listening to find out. Moving on to number 9 now, we have the sound of Jupiter. When NASA's Voyager craft visited Jupiter for the first time ever in 1979, it studied its powerful magnetosphere, whose magnetic effect is about 4,000 times stronger than Earth. Now Voyager got very close up and picked up the signals of this. NASA then turned that signal into sound. Many people say that what you're about to hear is very haunting, and that it sounds like celestial voices in deep space. Now that noise is apparently made by magnetically charged particles being blasted out into space, so at least I can tick Space Ghost off my list of scary things. Next up at number 8 we have the intruder. Do ghosts and paranormal things freak you out, guys? What about scary house intruders in the middle of the night? Well, this next clip could really be either of those. A woman called Jenny posted to Reddit a recording from a sleeping app she was using to see how restless her sleep was and hopefully improve it. Usually she only heard the occasional cough or shuffle, but one night it recorded this, a strange clicking sound which woke Jenny up. You hear her asking, "What are you doing?" A man's voice then clearly replies saying nothing. Then the clicking continues and we hear him mutter something else towards the end of the clip. See what you guys think.
What are you doing?
One Reddit user said this was the sound of a home intruder who was actually in Jenny's room and going through her stuff, and that she woke up and she was like half asleep, and then he said, "I'm not doing anything." That is creepy. Alright, moving on to number 7 now, we have the Quacker. Silly name, but bear with me guys. From the 1960s to the 1980s, at the height of the Cold War, submarines and oceans around the world started to pick up a very strange sound deep in the ocean. The Russian crews who first heard it had no idea what it was. It seemed to be coming from a very fast moving underwater craft or animal that would circle the submarines at speeds of up to 200 kilometers an hour. That's way faster than any man-made vessel. Whatever it was, the Russians called them quackers, and it freaked them out big time. By the end of the 80s, the mysterious sound had mysteriously disappeared altogether. Now scientists say it came from minke whales, but some people still maintain it was maybe secret government technology, undiscovered ocean creatures, or even aliens. Next up at number 6 now, we have the chimpanzee 911 call. In 2009, police in Connecticut received a phone call from Sandra Herold, the owner of Travis the chimpanzee, who she'd had for about 14 years. In all that time, Travis seemed very sociable and non-violent, but on this day one of Sandra's friends had come to visit. She was holding one of Travis's favourite toys in her hand, and when he saw that, he attacked her. Travis ripped her hands off. He ripped her eyes out and all of her face off, and her jaw too. Sandra made this desperate call as she watched her friend getting torn to pieces, and it is truly disturbing.
His daddy ripped her apart.
He ripped what apart? Her face?
Everything. Please hurry. Please hurry.
Moving on to number 5, we have the Jonestown Massacre. Now Jonestown was a religious cult that was set up by Reverend Jim Jones in Guyana in 1974. Hundreds of American cult members made the journey with him to live there over the next few years. He wanted to set up this sort of communist haven, far away from any interfering governments. By 1978, Jim Jones's mental health had begun to deteriorate, and his paranoia that the US government was trying to stop what they were doing led to a very terrible decision. He ordered all of his followers to meet in the center of Jamestown, at which point he commanded them to drink poison juice, and they did. 918 of them died that day, including 287 children who were forced to drink this. Jim Jones actually recorded something called the death tape, an audio recording of the event as his followers died around him. This is a chilling segment from that tape. Skip ahead now if you don't want to hear this. It's pretty disturbing.
We didn't commit suicide, we committed an act of revolutionary suicide protesting the conditions of an inhumane world.
Okay, next up at number 4 we have the murder call. The story goes with this one that an old woman called Ruth Price lived alone and often called police saying that she thought someone was watching her. Eventually, the police got a little bit fed up with this and they stopped taking her paranoia seriously, until one day this call came through.
Okay, where is he now, ma'am? I have no idea.
Apparently, after the line went dead, Ruth was killed by the attacker. Now some people say this call was used in police training afterwards as an example of why the operator should always get the caller's information before anything bad happens. But other people still doubt its authenticity. What do you guys think? Coming at number 3 now, we have the Ghost Song. The story behind this one is that it was written by a musician who was trying to find the sound of pure evil, suffering and death. He finally created created this song after a lot of work, simply called the Ghost Song. However, just 1 week after its completion, it seemed to drive him mad and he apparently killed himself. This is a segment of that song. Years later, people said this was actually written by a man called David Byrne, who was alive and well. For some people, that's a bit more comforting, but for others, even if that is true, it doesn't make this song any less scary. People still report having the strangest feeling wash over them when they hear it. Moving on to number 2 now, we have Julia. Now you guys might remember in our part 1 video, we talked about the Bloop, a strange sort of underwater sound that some people said came from a gigantic underwater creature. Well, a similar thing happened on March 1st, 1999. When a large network of hydrophones called the Eastern Equatorial Pacific Array picked up another strange sound. Now theorists say this is all proof of a monumentally huge creature or creatures lurking in the ocean depths. Take a listen. One explanation for that is that it's the sound of an Antarctic iceberg scraping on the ocean floor, but to this day opinion is divided, leaving many people still picturing a giant ocean beast. Starting things off at number 10, we have a sound that has been recorded by different people in different countries all over the world. The sound seems to be coming from the sky and can last seconds or minutes, but the one thing they all have in common is just how creepy they are. Take a little listen. What is that? What is going on there? That's a whole lot of nope right there. The noises have been reported every single year since 2008. There are a number of theories ranging from it being a sign of the apocalypse, an alien invasion, or even a government technique to control the weather. Some scientists say that it's being caused by solar flares reacting with the atmosphere or coming from deep within the planet's core. Moving on to number 9 now, we're going out into deep dark space to hear the creepy sounds of Saturn. The sound you're about to hear was recorded by the Cassini spacecraft back in 2002. It came from the planet's magnetic field over the polar regions. The frequency was so high that they had to shift it down a lot so that you can actually hear it. Let's listen. Wow, scientists have explained this sound as natural radio waves passing along the magnetic field lines of Saturn, but yeah, I don't really care if it's explainable, to be honest. It's really creepy. Alright, next up at number 8 now, we have the SpongeBob theme. Now I know what you guys are thinking, how is that scary? You have to be joking. It sounds like this.
Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? SpongeBob SquarePants!
Okay. But now guys, listen to this. This is exactly the same, but slowed down 800%. I don't know who discovered that, I don't know why they did it, but I wish they didn't. I know a lot of things sound creepier when they're slowed down, but this has to be the biggest one I've heard so far. Well guys, that is pretty much as light as we're going to get for this video, I'm afraid, so let's just press on to our number 7 now with the Aztec death whistles. When archaeologists found these small skull-shaped objects in the ancient Aztec temple, they weren't really sure what they were at first. Some said it was a toy or just an ordinary carving. It wasn't until 15 years later that one of them had the thought of blowing into it. It turned out to be a whistle. The noise that came out sounded a lot like a human scream, and some people think it was used before battle or for ceremonies such as human sacrifice. And with that lovely thought in mind, let's take a listen to the death whistle. creepy, creepy stuff. Alright, next up now at number 6, we have the Bloop. In 1997, scientists were using deep sea microphones to capture sound off the coast of South America. What they heard though, and what you're about to hear, baffled them. They said it could not have been made by a volcano or an underwater earthquake and was far louder than even the noise a blue whale makes. It was almost inconceivably loud and incredibly mysterious. These days, scientists have put forward the explanation that it's the sound of ice sheets cracking that reverberates throughout the whole ocean, but some people still hold on to the idea that the bloop came from a deep sea creature of unimaginable proportions. I personally don't think so, but mainly because I don't want it to be true. Alright, coming in at number 5 now, we have the castrato. Now during the Middle Ages in Europe, some choir leaders wanted their star male choir boys to keep their high-pitched voices forever and not have them lowered by puberty. They did this by castrating the boy, removing the testicles, which then left them with their high-pitched boy voice forever. They were then known as castrato. Now this practice was thankfully banned by the end of the 19th century, but one surviving recording of a real castrato has survived. This is that recording. This is Cavalier Morisetti, and some say you can even hear the sadness in his voice. Now apparently, some people used to think that was beautiful. That's not the word that I would use. Personally, I'd call it spooky. Yeah, and I hope I never hear that again. Okay, moving on to number 4 now, we have Operation Wandering Soul. During the Vietnam War, the US government learned about the belief of many Vietnamese that their dead must be buried in their homeland or their soul will wander through hell for eternity. In order to help them fight the Viet Cong, they actually made recordings of voices pretending to be dead soldiers trapped in hell, warning their comrades to flee from the war or face the same fate as them. Does that sound terrifying to you? That's because it is. Take a listen. Obviously, I'm not even a Viet Cong soldier, and that makes me want to go home and like huddle into a ball on my bed and cry my little eyes out. Yeah, I'm tough. And now at number 3, we have the oldest surviving recording of a human voice. Even that sentence is pretty creepy. What you're about to hear is a man called Edward Leon Scott recording himself singing using his invention, the phonautograph. It's from 1860. Take a listen. That is 100% nightmare fuel. It's not even the crackling noise or how old it is that makes it creepy for me, it's the song itself. It sounds like a funeral march. It's a cool piece of history, but a very, very creepy piece of history. Okay, moving swiftly on to number 2 now, things aren't getting any more pleasant as we've got a schizophrenic simulation. What you're about to hear is a recording that is supposed to recreate the voices that people with schizophrenia hear in their heads, whispering and telling them to do all kinds of bad things. That honestly makes me feel so bad for people with schizophrenia, but hopefully it will help bring awareness to that illness. For me, the scariest part was thinking, what if I paused the video, but the voices didn't stop? Okay, finally now at number 1, we have the exorcism of Anneliese Michel. Now this is apparently the sound recording of the exorcism of a German girl called Anneliese Michel who was supposedly possessed by 6 demons and Catholic priests trying to exorcise them out of her. They ultimately failed and Anneliese died in 1976 after not being able to eat. This was actually the inspiration for the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Now whether or not you believe in this kind of thing, it is undeniably scary, so if you do want to skip it, hit this right up here and it will skip it to the next bit. You can join us at the end. But for those of you who are still with us, let's take a listen. No. Now that video of this recording actually has 37 million views, and I imagine most people just listen to it once and then try and move on with their lives. Scary, scary stuff.
So first at number 10 is The Drowning. This clip was recorded by Brendan Cook and Barbara McBeath from the Ghost Investigator Society. It was recorded in an empty room in an abandoned mental hospital in Ogden, Utah. The recording I'm showing is something Cook said is the oddest recording that the pair has ever recorded. So it sounds like a child is saying, "I can't breathe," over and over. Then there are voices in and out, then water thrashing. That continues for a while until there is a thud, and then silence. The pair of investigators claim that there were no children present and that there has been no running water in the facility for almost 20 years. The only water in the building is in the building's basement where there is an old well. Listen for yourself. Number 9 is the table incident. So Kimberly Rodney on YouTube heard odd knocking noises coming from a table in her bedroom. So she set up a table recorder to see if she could pick anything up. She heard 5 different voices on the EVP after analyzing it. She left the tape recorder alone in her room during these recordings. The first 4 recordings were more muffled and had to be turned up to be heard, but the 5th one was something she classified as a Class A recording. Listen out for "Back to Work with Me" and see if that's what you hear. She said when she heard it, she jumped a mile, took off her headphones, and stopped analyzing the tape. It caught her so off guard she stopped recording for things for a year and a half. At number 8 is a child. So this clip is from YouTube user Jojo31978. I will now be calling her Jojo from now on. She was getting her voice recorder ready to see if she could capture some EVP when her 8-year-old son asked her how it worked. Jojo asked him to say something into it after she pressed record, that way she could show him. He said, "I love Mom," into it, but when she played it back, she heard another child's voice before her son's. Have a listen.
I love Mom. I love Mom.
Jojo is pretty sure the dissonant voice says, "Call Poppy." Jojo finds this significant since the reason she got the recorder out was to see if her dad would leave a message. Both she and her sister have lost children, so Jojo says she is sure it is one of them on the recording, maybe telling her to reach out to her dad. At number 7, we have high-pitched mystery sound. So this sound is now known as the Forest Grove sound because it happened exclusively in Forest Grove, Oregon. It happened only during February of 2016, but it was so annoying that about 200 calls were made to the Forest Grove Police Department about it.
The truth is out there, and whatever it sure is loud and baffling. Neil Karlinski, ABC News, Seattle.
So to you, does it sound like a steam whistle, a flute played off pitch, or car brakes? Whatever it was, no one knows. A physics professor named Andrew Dawes mapped out where noise was heard, but any results were inconclusive. So no one has any solid facts about what was doing this, and it just ended up stopping. It wasn't wildlife, it wasn't water or gas leak, there was a haunted house later that year based on the noise, but the mystery isn't solved. The haunted house, by the way, was called Aliens in the Grove, so maybe that's what was happening? At number 6, a disembodied ghost voice. So this was posted in March of 2019. Ghost Hunt Weekend says they believe it's a man's voice saying either EVP or EV. It was recorded at the Thomas House Hotel from inside the Grand Seance Room. A woman asks, "Would you do that please? Would you tell me your name?" And then some raspy audio comes through. That's what Ghost Hunt Weekends thinks is a man voice saying EVP or EV. Now, if it was saying EV, I'm guessing the voice may be looking for someone named Evie, a wife, mother, sister, or child perhaps. But if it's saying EVP, I bet it is some ghost whispering to another one to stay quiet so they don't get caught. You know, like, shh, it's EVP type thing. Have a listen for yourself. At number 5 is Whispers by the Morgue. So the American Paranormal Research Association worked in partnership with the Los Angeles Paranormal Association. They were at Linda Vista Community Hospital. They collected an EVP in the basement hallway that led to the morgue. On the recording, one investigator asked, "How are you associated with the hospital?" And in response, they heard this.
"How are you associated with the hospital?"
Now listen again and see if you can hear what the investigators thought they heard. We're not dead.
"How are you associated with the hospital?"
So if these are not ghosts of the dead, why are they hanging out at the morgue? Or are these spirits that have passed that are in denial? Or are they playing a joke? I obviously don't know. These are audio recordings that can't be explained, so I can't really tell you, can I? But see what you hear and whatever you can make of it. On to number 4, Whispers from Roxy. So this EVP was captured during a paranormal investigation at a squash club in Swinton, United Kingdom. It was originally a movie theater called Roxy Cinema that shut its doors unexpectedly in 1965. It was being investigated because the squash club's manager reported seeing a shadow ghost and some bottles moving by themselves. Here's the EVP. The investigative team said they heard, "I'm one down here," but others have suggested that the clip says, "I'm not done here." So listen again. Which do you think it is? Number 3 is televised scream. So EVP are captured by paranormal investigative teams, and that includes the Ghost Adventures crew. During season 17, episode 4, Tintic Mining District, they shared this EVP that they caught.
What name are you connected to? Who brought you here?
Zach's prompting questions were 1. What name are you connected to? And 2. Who brought you here? Zach says there is a voice that responds, "Zach Baggins," in response to his first question. But the really chilling audio is the response to the second question.
Never. Who brought you here?
Dude, what the fuck? That's not human at all.
Do you hear that? That's some sort of demonic or ghastly shrill scream. So whatever that thing was that made that noise, it's not happy. Another demonic sound is at number 2, demon sounds. So this sound was posted by Don Garvey on YouTube. He wrote that it comes from paranormal investigators in Philadelphia. So apparently the backstory is a homeowner was complaining of noises coming from their basement in the middle of the night. The paranormal investigative team put a digital audio recorder in the basement to see if they could pick up anything. The first 3 days there was nothing out of the ordinary. But then on the 4th night they caught this at 3:12 a.m. Garvey said in the original video that the audio was amplified 20 times, but nothing else was done to the audio. Garvey posted this back in November of 2007, just so you know. But let's go on to our last one. Number 1 is Ghost Fight. For this one, I invite you to have a listen and see what you can hear for yourself. Listen out for clock ticking, sounds of fighting, screaming, a man's voice, a voice saying, "Hello baby," and more screaming. Now that you've heard it, I'll give you more details. This clip was captured by the Central New York Ghost Hunters back in 2007. They did an overnight investigation at an old hotel. The hotel apparently had a history of nefarious activity, which may be why the EVP is the way it is. Everyone on hotel staff and the ghost hunters present the night of the recording were female, but listen out for the distinctly male-sounding voice in the recording. They recorded it in a stairwell below an empty floor where they had been hearing sounds, so maybe those sounds they had been hearing were just the sounds of the ghosts and they caught it more amplified on the EVP. Maybe? I don't know.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Wandering Soul. The Wandering Soul, sometimes referred to as Ghost Tape number 10, is the sounds that were played loud on speakers outside of US bases during the Vietnam War. The main goal was to scare away and taunt the enemies. The tape starts off playing funeral music and sounds of wailing ghosts. Then you can hear a bunch of eerie voices. When translated to English, the voices are saying things like, "Daddy, Daddy, come home with me, come home, Daddy." And the dad replies with, "But my body is gone, I am dead." Basically, it's a Vietnamese belief that if the dead aren't buried in their homeland, then their souls will wander around in pain and suffering. So this tape was supposed to be the voice of their dead comrades wandering around.
Còn đâu vẫn hình hài nữa. Tôi đã chết rồi má con đây ơi. Tôi hẳn không biết chừng nào.
Moving on to number 9, we have the Night Stalker. The Night Stalker was a serial killer who murdered at least 10 people in Southern California from 1979 to 1986. He also assaulted around 50 women in Northern California. The identity of this criminal is now known, but back in the day, police didn't know who he was. As a result, he was named one of the worst and most prolific unapprehended serial offenders in history. So during his reign of terror, the Night Stalker would leave disturbing messages on his victims' answering machines. One recording in particular will send shivers down your spine. The recording starts off with sounds of heavy breathing. Then in a creepy whisper, the Night Stalker says, "I'm going to kill you," over and over again. In our 8th spot, we have the domestic abuse. This next recording is a pretty popular one. It features a woman in an abusive relationship calling the police to report it. However, she disguises her plea for help as if she's ordering pizza. The operator is confused at first, but eventually clues in that this woman is calling for help. He asks her if there's someone in the room with her and if there are any weapons in the house. The call ends with the operator asking her if she can stay on the line. She says no, see you soon, then hangs up. This recording is very scary, just knowing the situation that the woman was in, and you can hear the panic in her voice as she tries to remain calm. This recording was actually used in a Super Bowl commercial as a PSA for domestic abuse.
Order a pizza for delivery.
Ma'am, you've reached 911. This is an emergency line.
Large with half pepperoni, half mushroom.
You know you've called 911. This is an emergency
Do you
line.
know how long it'll be?
Okay, ma'am, is everything okay over there? Do you have an emergency or not?
Yes.
Coming in at number 7, we have Jonestown. On November 8th, 1978, 900 people died in a mass murder-suicide at the order of cult leader Jim Jones. Jim Jones was a reverend and leader of an American cult in the Guyanese jungle. On that day, he convinced his loyal followers to kill themselves and their children by drinking cyanide-laced punch. It's said that some drank it willingly, while others had it forced upon them. Now, there is a 44-minute long conversation of these events. You hear Jones giving a big speech and people applauding him. He says things like, "We are not committing suicide, it's a revolutionary act." You can hear babies and children screaming and crying as he instructs the parents on how to commit the act. You can hear others saying no and a woman saying that she's not ready to die. Then, when everyone has passed away, all you hear is silence as the background music still eerily plays.
All we're doing is laying down our life. We're not letting them take our life. We're laying down our life. Just taking their lives. We just want peace.
Making our way down the list, number 6, we have The Exorcism. The Exorcism of Anneliese Michel is a pretty famous one. Anneliese was a German Catholic woman who was said to have been possessed by 5 different demons. That's right, not just 1, 5. She underwent 67 exorcisms, most of them lasting for up to 4 hours. She claimed that she saw the face of the devil and could hear demons whispering in her ears. This recording was taken during one of Anneliese's exorcisms. It's terrifying. You can hear her screaming and yelling in pain as they're performing it. On top of that, her voice literally sounds demonic. She has this deep, raspy growl thing. It's truly terrifying. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with The Massacre. On February 14th, 2018, a gunman entered Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida and killed 17 individuals and harmed 17 others. The 911 calls from students and even parents of the students were then released. Most of the kids texted their parents, and then their parents were the ones making the calls to the police. You can hear how panicked they are for their child's safety. What stuck with me the most is one mom telling her kid that she loves them repeatedly and to play dead if the shooter comes into the room. She says, "You need to dive on the floor and play dead if he starts shooting." She then won't stop telling her child that she loves them. I just can't imagine how scared those parents and students must have been.
I love you. It's Mom. God, Lord, Lord God. Lord God.
Is it the police?
No, it's not the police. It's okay. It's okay. Oh my God.
Police. They said put your hands up.
I love you. I love you. It's going to be fine. Can you hide somewhere? Can you play dead? Yes. If he shoots, you need to fake dead. If he shoots, fake dead.
Moving on at number 4, we have the emergency. There's nothing scarier than witnessing something tragic at such a young age. That would be carried with you throughout your entire life. Well, sadly, an 8-year-old girl witnessed both her mom and dad get shot. Her 911 call to the police was then recorded and uploaded online. In the call, she says that her mom is still breathing, but her dad is not. She then says her dad is dead. You can hear the panic in her voice. She tries calling for her mom multiple times to get her home address for the operator. She begs them to come fast, saying that her mom's almost dead. That is absolutely terrifying, and no one should ever have to witness that, especially not a kid.
911 with problem.
My mommy's in the basement, and I need emergency, and I need, hello?
Where at? Let me speak to your mom.
No, she's almost dead. Mommy! Where are we at? Tell me, I got the police on the phone. Tell me!
In our third spot, we have the car accident. This is one recording that I honestly wish I could erase completely from my memory. So it's a recorded 911 call by a man who's driving a car in which his accelerator is stuck. In the car was his 3 other family members. He is telling the 911 operator his location and that he can't use his brakes. He then approaches the intersection, and that's when they get into a fatal car crash. The last couple of seconds of this call are so sad. You can hear him say, "Hold on guys, pray, pray, pray." And then his wife screams and you can hear the car smash against something. That was the last moments of their lives.
Intersection. We're approaching the intersection.
Okay.
We're approaching the intersection. Hold on. Pray. Pray.
Okay.
Oh, shoot. Oh. Oh. Oh.
Okay. Hello?
In our second spot, we have the bear attack. Honestly, I was not mentally prepared to hear this recording. On October 6, 2003, Timothy Treadwell and his girlfriend Amy Huonard were attacked and killed by a bear while out camping. Timothy wasn't a novice camper. He had camped out in several Alaskan parks, but this time it turned out to be deadly. In the middle of the night, a bear wandered into their campsite and attacked them. In the recording, you can hear Timothy screaming and panicking as the bear attacks him. You can also hear the bear growling and grunting as he attacks. You can honestly hear the pain in Timothy's screams and how fearful Amy is. Towards the end of the recording, you can even hear Timothy being dragged away from the campsite by the bear as he screams in pain. Eventually, their remains were found buried by the bear near the campsite. In fact, in a mound of dirt, some fingers and an arm were found sticking out. They both faced an extremely gruesome and slow, painful death that was captured in this recording.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Wyoming incident. According to internet legend, this was a broadcast hack that happened in 2008, affecting a number of communities in the town of Niobrara in Wyoming. Their regular news show was interrupted with this.
Preparation for the 2008 general election. Republican President Jackson.
Over the next 6 minutes or so, viewers were shown text messages and strange visuals with audio snippets playing over them. Every 10 to 15 seconds a message would appear announcing that this was a special presentation. The text would say things like, "You will see such pretty things," and "You are ill, we just want to fix you," and "What hides in your mind?" Now that last question was later answered with the chilling message of, "We have already seen it." What was even stranger was that people reported having a physical reaction to the footage. This included vomiting, hallucinations, and headaches. Others said that the frequencies played made viewers' eyeballs vibrate and create visual hallucinations. I'm glad we didn't show the whole clip then. Next up at number 9 now, we have Max Headroom. Now this is perhaps the most famous one on the list. Maybe some of you guys have seen it. On the evening of November 22nd, 1987, many people were enjoying an episode of Doctor Who on Chicago WTTW Channel 11. For those Who fans out there, the episode was Horror of Fang Rock. Anyway, the broadcast was interrupted by a signal intrusion. Suddenly, viewers saw an unknown person wearing a Max Headroom mask and sunglasses. Max Headroom was a TV character from a show in the mid-80s. The imposter hijacked the broadcast for 90 seconds in which he rambled about Coca-Cola, the TV series Clutch Cargo, and WGN anchor Chuck Swirsky. To be honest, even with subtitles, it's quite difficult to make out what's being said. At the time, an FCC engineer said that the perpetrators would face a maximum $10,000 fine, up to a year in prison, or both. It's been over 30 years since the event though, and the culprits have never been caught. Coming in at the number 8 spot now, we have Vrillon. This is a strange one from 1977. During a regular news show on Southern Television, there was a broadcast interruption just after 5 PM on November 27th. After some static and visual warping, a voice made this announcement.
This is the voice of Vrillon, representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you.
That person, calling themselves Vrillon, claimed to be an alien commander from an intergalactic association. The disembodied voice spoke for about 6 minutes. The main message was a warning to all humans to put down our weapons of war and to enter a new age of Aquarius. Then, and only then, would we make it to the next level of evolution.
Suck your energy from you, the energy you call money, and we'll put it to evil areas, giving you worthless dross in return.
Moving on to number 7 now, we have Playboy. I'm sure I don't need to explain to you guys what Playboy is, and if I do, I probably shouldn't. Needless to say, its late night TV shows have been very popular for many, many years. It's one of those channels where you wouldn't expect to see much religious talk, shall we say. However, that's exactly what you would have seen if you tuned into the channel on September 6, 1987. Someone interrupted the broadcast that night and displayed a quote from the Bible. I wonder how that went down with the Playboy viewers. The Bible verses were taken from Exodus and Matthew and read, "Thus saith the Lord thy God, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand." The white text and black background appeared during a movie that Playboy had on called Three Daughters, and a number of viewers phoned in to ask what was going on. Police were able to trace the signal though, and 3 years later, a man called Thomas Haney was identified as the culprit. Next up at number 6 now, we have The Nuke. Okay, for this one, I want you guys to do a bit of imagining now. I want you to imagine you're just chilling at home, just watching a channel that's showing beautiful scenery, live, it's playing relaxing music, that sort of thing, and then you see this. Yeah, that looked a lot like a nuke, and people in Czechoslovakia thought so too when this appeared on a TV show called Panorama in June 2007. The show usually just showed scenic footage of the Czech countryside to attract tourists to Prague and the surrounding area. When the camera appeared to show a nuclear bomb exploding during its morning broadcast, all hell broke loose. Some people who lived in the area started trying to leave before the radiation spread. Others were contacting the government asking what to do. The government received so many panic calls that they had to issue an official statement confirming that Prague had not been bombed. It turns out that the footage was created as a performance piece by a group called Zothoven. I'm sure their artistic message is appreciated by some people out there, but maybe not the ones who thought they were actually having to flee for their lives. Coming in at the number 5 spot now, guys, we have The Old Couple. This is a really strange one that occurred in July 2007 during regular broadcasting on ABC's affiliate channel WJLA. This image appeared on the screen. Now to this day, nobody is exactly sure what this picture is of. Clearly, it's two faces. One of them is smiling and one of them looks quite concerned. The faces look like they've been computer generated. Now to me, it looks like something out of a 90s video game. This creepy image stayed on the screen for several seconds with no sound before completely vanishing. Many people said there was a dark meaning to all of this, that this was no ordinary interruption. The cable company in charge of the broadcast said there was a programming mix-up from an advertisement for the Oprah Winfrey Show. That seemed to satisfy most people, but things took a turn when videos of the event were all removed from YouTube due to restricted access. To this day, I still couldn't find any clips of this on YouTube. All that has survived is this image and the questions that come with it. Coming at number 4 now, we have War of the Worlds. Have you guys ever seen the War of the Worlds movie with Tom Cruise? I really like that movie, I'm not gonna lie. But did you know where the title for that movie came from? In 1938, future filmmaking legend Orson Welles created a radio drama based on H.G. Wells' novel The War of the Worlds. It was made to sound like a genuine news broadcast about aliens from Mars invading Earth. If you guys were to hear it on the radio today, you might think, oh, this is obviously a piece of written drama, it's not real. Well, back in 1938, on the eve of World War II, it was a very different time. Many people listening to the broadcast missed the introduction where it clearly states that the following is a piece of radio drama, and they thought it was totally real. This is what they heard.
About 20 yards to my right. Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Grover's Mill.
Now, according to legend, some people were so convinced that America was being invaded by Martians that they fled their homes in a panic. In the following days, there was an outcry for broadcasters to be regulated to stop this thing kind of happening ever again. That failed, and the piece went down in history as one of the most famous pieces of radio drama ever, and possibly one of the greatest pranks of all time. Next up at number 3 now, we have Handy Manny. Some of our North American viewers may have grown up watching this kid show. The animated TV series follows Manny, a repairman with talking tools. It's fun, it's educational, they sing, you get the idea. Handy Manny is also famous though for a shocking broadcast interruption which occurred on May 1st, 2007. Viewers of the show in Lincroft, New Jersey had their episode interrupted by a clip from an adult movie. Yeah. Say no more. Many of the other interruptions we've talked about usually last for 10, 15, 30 seconds. The adult film clip on Handy Manny went on for several minutes. Naturally, people wanted an explanation. Thousands of kids must have seen this. Comcast was the network that was responsible for the intrusion, or at least they should have been the ones to stop it from happening. They didn't have an answer for why it happened, and over a decade on now, they still don't. Moving on to number 2 now, we have Mayday. On January 3rd, 2007, Channel 7 in Australia was airing a Canadian documentary called Mayday, which features cases of air disasters. At some point during the broadcast, things got strange. The visuals continued as normal, but the audio started repeating a single phrase on a loop. One quick-thinking YouTuber uploaded this video of the event. Many people think that the voice is that of a man from America's deep south saying the phrase, "Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord." See what you think. That went on for an astonishing 6 minutes before everything returned to normal. Many people wanted answers, but Channel 7 were very evasive. They denied that there had been an intrusion, but also disputed what the clip was actually saying. They claimed the voice said, "Jesus Christ, one of the Nazarenes." The fact that so many people disagree with that has only added fuel to the fire that something very strange happened that day. And finally, number 1 now, we have Coast to Coast AM. That's the name of this talk show run by Art Bell. He was used to strange calls on his show, but things got even stranger on September 12th, 1997. That night, Art got a call from a guy who claimed to have been an employee at the mysterious Area 51 base, where conspiracy theorists say the US Air Force contained and studied aliens and their crashed spacecraft. The caller sounded terrified and claimed that they were coming for him and that he didn't have much time to share with the world what he knew about Area 51. He talked about extra-dimensional beings who are not what they appear to be, that they have infiltrated the US military and are now taking over.
Okay, what we're thinking of as aliens are They're extra-dimensional beings.
The caller began to sound more erratic and panicked. Finally, he started talking about how governments are trying to get human populations down to a manageable number so that they're easier to control. Just after this, the line went dead when the power cut out at the station. By the time they got the backup generators running, the caller was gone. Conspiracy theorists say that it was more than a coincidence that the caller was cut off and never heard from again just when he began to spill the beans on secret government activity. What do you guys think? At number 10 now, the sound of a black hole. Edward Morgan from MIT collected X-ray data on a distant black hole, then transmitted it into a sound that is audible to humans. The original of this is about 1,000,000 billion times deeper than anything you could ever hear. The deepest note in the universe, in fact. But with a little bit of tweaking, here is a sound of an actual black hole, and it's terrifying. Coming out at number 9, we have the lost cosmonaut. In 1961, two Italian brothers recorded a signal from space which they claimed was from a secret Soviet space mission. It sounded like a female cosmonaut who was in distress while trying to orbit the Earth. Something had apparently gone wrong. She was complaining of feeling hot as she burned up in the atmosphere. Now the Russians announced that an unmanned craft had burned up in the atmosphere and denied they had any knowledge of the lost cosmonaut. At the number 8 spot now, we have Tabby's star. This mysterious star was discovered by amateur astronomers and found to be about 1,400 light years from Earth. The strange thing was, the brightness of it would dip by 22% for days at a time. Some suggested it was a Dyson sphere, a theoretical alien structure that would enclose a whole star to harvest all of its power. For many years it's been just a sci-fi idea, but Tabby's star seemed to fit this theory very well. At the time of recording, scientists are still carrying out further studies. Coming in at number 7 now, we have 234 stars. In 2016, Canadian astronomers found something very strange within the Milky Way. 234 stars that were blinking at exactly the same rate. Eric Trottier, the astronomer who found this, proposed that the signal was just too much of a coincidence. He thought it was of alien origin. He said that the pulsating signals were caused by an alien civilization flashing a laser in our direction, causing a faint but detectable blip in their star's light. The stars could even be 234 different civilizations pulling together to try and contact us. Moving on to number 6 now, we have the sound of Saturn. In 2002, the Cassini spacecraft passed by the gas giant of Saturn. It listened to the planet's aurora caused by its huge magnetic field. The signal was way out of human hearing, so they slowed it right down, they compressed it, and this is what they heard. Alright, moving on to number 5 now, we have the Lorimer burst. This signal was detected in 2007 after astronomers dug through 6 years of previous data. Then, they found it. It was a very brief burst of radio emission, just 5 milliseconds in total. The area it came from was 5 to 11 billion light years away from Earth. This means that when the signal left its origin, Earth hadn't even been formed yet, which is mind-blowing. Scientists were shocked to find that whatever made this signal released more energy in that short burst than the sun does in 4 months. Moving on to number 4 now, we have this. It's a very weird name, but it has an incredible story behind it. Scientists detected this signal from an empty area of space with no stars or planet systems near it for about 1,000 light years, from an area between the constellations of Pisces and Aries, and yet a signal came. It was detected as being a short burst at about 1420 megahertz. That's one of the main frequencies at which hydrogen, the most common element in the universe, absorbs and emits energy. Scientists have often thought of using this to contact any aliens out there, and so when we received it, it's drawn a lot of attention. Coming in at number 3 now, we have frequency 4462.3. This signal came from a star only 100 light years from us, and it was a star quite similar to our own. It's called TYC 1220911, and it was nothing out of the ordinary until it did something. The noise it made was just 10 seconds long, but now that it's been adjusted so we can hear it, it's very scary and creepy. Tell me what you think of it. number 2, we have the cosmic roar. In 2006, a group of California astronomers were trying to detect the very first stars in the universe. Instead, they heard a radio wave roar. What they heard was 6 times louder than the faint signal they expected to detect. In fact, this roar was 6 times greater than the combined emission of all known radio wave sources. And this wasn't the sound of the Big Bang, it was the sound of something mysterious from the start of the universe, something more intense than we've ever encountered. And finally now at number 1, we have the wow signal. What else could it be, really? In 1977, Ohio State University's Big Ear radio telescope detected the strangest signal ever heard from space. It came from the Sagittarius constellation, and many scientists thought that it sounded like it could be of extraterrestrial origin. It lasted for 72 seconds, and then it was never heard of again. The astronomer who found the signal was so shocked by it that they wrote "wow" in the margin, giving us its name. Now it's been adjusted like some of the other ones so that we can hear it, and this is what it sounds like.
Starting us off, in at number 10, we have a sound that had a whole city complain about it, but no one can explain what this sound was.
Police have been inundated with 911 calls.
Are you calling about loud music?
So this scary, mysterious sound seemed to be coming from a river located in New Jersey. Late at night, while most residents are fast asleep, this loud noise happened. Police have been called many times about all these noise complaints, but there was just nothing that they can do about it. There was nothing they could do about the eerie noises that were being made. If this was me, I would for sure skip on the complaining part and move right along into the moving out part, move to another city. I would get myself away from this noise so damn fast. I mean, this noise was created by nobody, possibly created by aliens or something. Maybe this is a warning sign to get out. At number 9, I wouldn't move too quickly to the UK, where this strange trumpet noise was heard coming from the sky.
Huh? The f is it? It's coming from the sky.
So this guy heard this noise from the sky and decided to film it. Because that's what we do in 2019. It was kind of hard to listen to the noise while this guy was inside, but it gets really loud and very scary when the guy went outside to film. Is this real life right now? I would honestly think the world is ending, or is coming to an end very, very soon. Or something unbelievable was going to happen. Maybe alien invasion, or some creatures that were about to make contact with us here on Earth. Here's another audio of the same sound, but in a different location. These workers were in a forest when they heard the trumpet-like sound. I mean, this gets quite loud. Moving into number 8, we have the terrifying and loud sounds from Hurricane Ike. This was the devastating hurricane that hit North America back in 2008. This was a Category 4 major hurricane that caused $38 billion worth in damages, which made this hurricane the 6th costliest hurricane in the United States and the costliest in Cuban history. So the audio I'm about to share with you guys was filmed on the 11th floor of a resort hotel. Listen to this. I mean, this is what nightmares are made of. For sure, this could be used for a scene of a horror movie, if it wasn't already used. See, I told you guys in a previous video, wind is very scary. Wind is one of my biggest fears. Let me know what is your biggest fear in the comment section below. Mine is wind. Alright, so now that we all know that I'm afraid of wind, let's move on to scary screams in at number 7. In this next clip that I'm about to show you guys, you'll hear some diabolic laughter and screeching. This was recorded late at night on a reserve, and I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't stick around long enough to capture the sound on camera. Well, let's have a listen to what this person was able to capture instead of running away. What do you guys think is making this sound? At first, I thought it was some crazy person terrorizing the city, terrorizing the streets. Like, it honestly sounds like the Purge or something is about to go down. Or maybe an SCP broke out of containment. All I know is I would be inside of my car, driving as fast as I can to the next state over. Now at number 6, we have a scary sound from the ocean. I already think that the ocean is a scary place. I mean, 95% of the world's ocean is left unexplored. So who knows what is lurking at the bottom of it? It's pretty dark and it's probably really cold down there. We can have a new killer species living down there and we would have no idea. With that in mind, let's listen to a creepy audio from the ocean. Oh, and just a warning, if you're home alone right now and you get scared pretty easily, I'd probably plug my ears for this clip because it's actually really terrifying. This audio was recorded off the coast of Antarctica, and it made national news. Some people think that this is a sound from an iceberg scraping the ocean floor. Others think it's a whale, but my favorite theory, this could be the sound of Cthulhu waking up from his beauty sleep. But whatever the heck it is, hopefully not Cthulhu, this sound is a great reminder that the ocean is a big mysterious place that requires more exploration. But if it was up to me, I would leave that stuff, unexplored. Let's take this list to outer space, and at number 5. Have you guys ever heard what Saturn sounds like? No? Well, buckle up, because you're in for a treat. This video is giving me some serious PTSD. Why are wind sounds so freaking scary? Am I the only one here? This audio was taken from a radio emissions from Saturn, and it was converted so that humans can hear it. I think we'd be better off not hearing this sound. I imagine this is what hell would sound like. So yeah, remind me to never ever take a trip to Saturn, because I don't think I'd be able to live with hearing this sound every single day. So you know what? Saturn, it's just not for me. Next up, number 4, we have the Wandering Soul. This is actually an audio mix that the US military used during the Vietnam War. This audio was used against the enemy to scare them into submission. This would for sure submit me. You tell me if this would work on you guys. I just find this audio to be extremely annoying. If I heard this as an American soldier, I'd want to go home too. But when you really think about it, this audio is extremely terrifying, because just imagine being a Vietnamese soldier, patrolling through the jungle, and it's pitch black, and then you hear this sound off in the distance. I would be running. Moving up this list, and at number 3, we have schizophrenia. This next audio clip is a representation of what a person with schizophrenia would hear in their mind. It's a good way for others to try and, get a better understanding of what they're experiencing. But prepare yourselves, it isn't easy to listen to. Listen to this.
So stupid. Look at you. No, you can't. Stupid. Poison. Jump now. Jump in front of the car. Go on. Do it.
I couldn't even listen to the entire recording because it made me too anxious. I couldn't imagine having these voices in my head 24/7. You know what? I'm scared and I only listened to like 20 seconds of it. Number 2. What do you guys think that sounded like? Well, let me know in the comment section below. Let's hear it one more time. I think this sound should have its own creepypasta. I mean, this is the first known recording of a human voice. The original recording dates back to 1860, and all I have to say is that I'm super grateful for autotune, but all jokes aside, this is pretty amazing if you think about that there's something about this recording that gives me chills. So let's try and forget about this one, forget about this creepy voice, and let's move on. Finally, number 1 spot, we have a very loud sound that came from the skies in Terrace or British Columbia, which is in Canada. What you're about to hear was heard by thousands of confused people around 7 in the morning. And I warn you guys, it's kinda loud and it's hella annoying. Maybe the heavens are opening up and that's the noise it makes. I'm not sure why God is making so much noise 7 in the morning, but that must be a pretty terrifying thing to wake up to. Well, Kimberly Wookie was the one that uploaded this clip onto YouTube, and it has over 6.5 million views at the time of this recording. And she said in the description, "This is not fake or a hoax. What I recorded is what I woke up to this morning. The original files is on my camcorder, which can be examined for authenticity." She also went on to say this wasn't the first time she heard these sounds. The first time she heard it was in June of that year at 9 or 9:30 in the morning. I think the Men in Black, Ed or Lorraine Warren, maybe Ghostbusters, Sam and Dean Winchester, or even a priest should be investigating all of these sounds.
In our number 10 spot, we have the Mars quake. Picked up by NASA's InSight, the robot on Mars, on April 6, 2019. In this specific recording, 3 sounds can be heard. The first 2 are suspected to be wind on Mars and a Mars version of an earthquake, and then there's sound from the robot at the end. This is wild to hear and definitely makes you wonder how often the Mars quakes happen. Hopefully not too often, because if we plan on moving to Mars someday, all the high maintenance humans will not be okay with that. Okay, fine, myself included. Okay, on a serious note, the sound is pretty intense. Have a listen. In our number 9 spot, we have a Saturn thunderstorm. Apparently, ever since the Voyager flew past Saturn, scientists have taken note of potential lightning deep within Saturn. The sound that is captured here, to me, it sounds like the intense bubbling of water in a pot, or perhaps the crazy static in between radio frequencies. It's hard to imagine a world like Saturn that may have such intense lightning storms. Imagine Saturn is a world where it always rains. And if so, then I have to say that Saturn is probably where hell is. It is believed that the word Saturn is related to Satan, so it works. Take a listen to hear these staticky crackles that are believed to be sounds from a lightning storm. In our number 8 spot, we have Saturn's radio emissions. Another recording from Saturn, and where this one came from is super interesting. In December 2016, NASA's Cassini spacecraft crossed the plains of Saturn and took a number of recordings of the planet. This one in particular literally sounds like the opening to the English dubbed 90s version of Sailor Moon. My fave version of Sailor Moon. Even though that is an unpopular opinion, it's how I got introduced to the show, okay? So it'll always hold a special place in my heart. Anyways, this sound is creepy, and it is the sound of the radio emissions leaving Saturn. Take a listen. In our number 7 spot, we have Jupiter's bow shock. This is a sound that was recorded by the Voyager spacecraft as it was passing through the region of Jupiter. It is said that the sun emits a type of solar wind, which can be repelled by a strong magnetic force such as that of a planet. It is deflected, and the energy is apparently converted into thermal energy. This is known as a bow shock, and what you are about to hear is the sound of a bow shock. The sound reminds me of what I can imagine as an instant catastrophic tornado. Have a listen and let me know if you agree in the comment section below. In our number 6 spot, we have Jupiter's moon. Jupiter's moon, also known as Ganymede, apparently makes some pretty strange sounds, and I'm pumped to share it with you all. NASA's Galileo spacecraft robot studied Jupiter and its surrounding area, and it picked up on some plasma wave observations, and this confirmed that the moon has its own magnetosphere. These sounds are quite spooky and remind me of the sounds that you can imagine some alien communication device to make. It feels straight out of a movie. Because maybe it is. Psych! This isn't real, and no one actually ever went to the moon. Dun dun dun. Just joking. These are the spooky sounds that Galileo picked up. In our number 5 5 spot, we have the Earth's whisper. I'm sorry, Melissa, did you just say the Earth's whisper? You're going to show us a sound of the Earth talking very quietly? Yes, in a matter of speaking. Literally. Somebody save me from myself. Okay, so NASA recorded the Earth making some pretty crazy noises, and apparently the noise was coming from charged particles emanating from the Earth. It honestly sounds like birds calling to each other on a hot summer day, or what I imagine the rainforest to sound like. But anyways, it's pretty cool to listen to, so take a listen. In our number 4 spot, we have Callisto. Callisto is another Jupiter moon that we've recorded some audio of. This recording sounds an awful lot like Callisto is filled with C-3POs from Star Wars, as that's the only way I can describe this sound. It's very, robotic, and at the same time, it sounds like it's heavily burning something, but I'm not sure if that's just the recording device or part of the sound. Apparently, Callisto has the weakest interaction with Jupiter's magnetosphere of any of the 4 largest moons. Take a listen and let us know your thoughts. In our number 3 spot, we have the sounds of Jupiter. The sounds of Jupiter are intense. It sounds like crystals dropping mixed with the sound that you hear in movies when things are going back in time. It could also seem like small mice making these sounds too. It's pretty extraordinary and quite different from a lot of these other videos. It's interesting how consistent the sound is also. Apparently, NASA's Cassini spacecraft captured this sound when stopping by Jupiter for a gravitational boost while on its way to its next destination. Have a listen. Coming up in our number 2 spot, we have the sun's vibrations. I couldn't decide if this should be number 1 or 2 on the list because it's just as cool as number 1. Maybe better, that's debatable. What you're about to hear is actual recorded sound from the sun. Whoa. The vibrations in this video may appear to be low, but what's interesting about the vibrations is that they appear to be positive. It feels good to listen to its hum, like it has a warmth to it that will lift up your spirits if you continue to listen, which honestly makes sense. I don't know why, but it does. Anyways, listen to the sounds of the sun and let me know if you feel and understand what I'm talking about. In our number 1 spot, we have the black hole. Okay, I had to put this one in first because the concept of the black hole is just mind-blowing to me. A black hole is essentially a region of space-time where gravity is so strong that nothing, no particles or even electromagnetic radiation such as light, can escape from it. People believe that beyond a black hole are other dimensions and universes. It's a thing of fascination for many, and so of course when I came across this sound bit, I had to include it in this video. This is a sound bit that shows the force of a black hole and how terrifying it might be to get close to one. Not that we ever would, unless of course we build a spacecraft in our lifetime that gets us close to it, but unless that happens, the likelihood is slim. Anyways, it sounds like what I imagine ghosts or ghouls sound like when they're moaning. Take a listen.